Are we live and recording yet, Dwayne?
We are.
Well, maybe in the background off my other computer, you can hear the church bells. That means it's high noon. Good afternoon. And welcome to the April 8th meeting of the Westside City's Council of Governments. We know that some people are having a little bit of difficulty connecting today, so people may be coming in late. But let's start with going around the room now with who's here already. If you are the voting delegate for your city, please specify that. And I'll start. I'm Kevin McKeown, council member from Santa Monica and voting delegate for Santa Monica.
Hi, I'm Gleam Davis, council member from Santa Monica, and I'm the alternate.
And I'm Bob Wunderlich, mayor of Beverly Hills for at least the last 2 days, and I am the voting member.
I'm Lauren Meister, and I'm Mayor Pro Tem in City of West Hollywood, and I'm the voting member.
I'm Julian Gold. I'm council member of Beverly Hills. I'm just here to listen.
Hi, Alex Fish, Mayor of Culver City, and I'm the voting member. And congratulations, Mayor Wunderlich.
Anybody else from our constituencies? If not, then will other people introduce themselves, please?
Hi, Fernando Morales, here on behalf of Supervisor Kuehl as her alternate.
Hi, I'm Jay Greenstein. I'm Transportation Deputy for LA City Council Member Paul Koretz.
Hi, Gabriella Yap, Deputy City Manager for Beverly Hills.
Shelley Wolfberg, City of Culver City Assistant to the City Manager.
Lynn Chen, City of Culver City Assistant to the City Manager on Homelessness.
Hi, Josh Kirpies from Assemblymember Richard Bloom's office.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Venegas with the City of Santa Monica.
Martha Arrows with the City of Beverly Hills.
Patrick Chandler with Metro Community Relations.
Come now, don't be shy.
Hi, this is Kobe Kim with High Point Strategies here representing UCLA today.
Paul Backstrom with LA Metro Long Range Planning.
Peter Carter with LA Metro, speaking on behalf of the Sepulveda Transit Corridor Project.
We have people who are just joining. We're doing a roll call and turn around the room to welcome people. So if you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself, please do so now.
We can introduce the clock staff, starting with me, Winnie with the Westside City's Council of Governments.
Cecilia Stolano, Executive Director, Westside City's Council of Government.
Riley O'Brien. Lauren Langer, Council for the COG. Oh, sorry, Riley, I jumped ahead of you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Lauren. This is Riley O'Brien, analyst with Westside City's COG.
Cindy Owens, City of Beverly Hills.
Okay, last chance. I still see a few names I don't think have introduced themselves, but I apologize if I missed you. Is there anybody left who has not introduced themselves?
Hernan Molina, City of West Hollywood.
Thank you.
Sarah Patterson with SCAG.
David Fenn, City of West Hollywood.
And Karen Swift, Metro Community Relations, here for Sepulveda Transit Corridor Project with Peter Carter.
I think that may be it. If not, if you have a case of terminal shyness, I guess we'll just hear from you if you wish to speak at some point. So we'll move right into the meeting and we get right into it with our action items. First of all, let me just confirm, we do have a quorum. Is that correct, Winnie? For the record?
That is correct.
Thank you. First action item is item 3A, the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. I hope you all got them in the packet, had a chance to look. Are there any requests for amendments or corrections or other changes to those minutes? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Well, I was entertaining a motion. You just made it.
Okay.
I'll make a
So I'm not sure if I'm moving or seconding, but whichever one is needed, I'll do that.
Okay, so it was moved by West Hollywood and seconded by Beverly Hills, as I understand it. So is there any discussion? If not, we'll go to a roll call vote. I don't see any discussion, Wendy, so let's go to a roll call.
Great. Beverly Hills,
Yes.
Culver City,
Yes.
Santa Monica. Santa Monica,
Yes.
West Hollywood,
Yes.
and County of Los Angeles.
Yes.
Great.
Sorry, I'm used to having the mayor or the chair go last, so I wasn't anticipating being called on at that.
Okay. Got it.
We'll move on to the next action item, since we're on the move now, and that's item 3B, the Metro West Side Central Service Council nomination. And I'll turn to staff on this, but I understand we've gotten one letter of interest. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We have received a letter of interest from Martha Eros from the city of Beverly Hills. It's in your agenda packet to continue another 3-year term with the Service Council. Martha's been doing this and serving as our representative for a number of years now and providing updates to cities and staff.
And Martha's with us today. Thank you for your service and for being here today. Do our rules allow for nominations other than letters of interest from the floor at the meeting?
Yes, I believe they do.
Then I will open the floor for other nominations if there are any. And seeing none, I'll close that. And so the matter before us is whether to reappoint Martha Eros based on her letter of interest. It'd be a pretty simple up or down vote. Is there any discussion on that, or can we go to a roll call? Roll call.
Necessary, I'll move that we appoint Martha Eros.
Oh, that's good. We have a motion. Thank you. Moved by Beverly Hills, and a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by West Hollywood. Thank you. We do need that formality before we go to the roll call. Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Beverly Hills,
Yes.
Culver City,
Yes.
West Hollywood,
Yes.
Santa Monica,
Yes.
and County of Los Angeles.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Martha, and welcome again to the show that never ends. We appreciate your service. That concludes item 3B, moves us to item 3C, a proposed statement on the Sepulveda Transit Corridor alternates for environmental review. And colleagues, you'll notice you got a revision just yesterday. That's my fault. I felt we should phrase this as a positive rather than telling them what we don't want, to tell them what we do want. So staff, do you want to present what is before us since you gave us a new attachment just yesterday?
Yeah, happy to do that. So I appreciate the revised motion to make it more positive and affirmative. What we blasted out to you in the agenda and in the update really relates to the Sepulveda corridor and what Metro's been doing in terms of pre-development contracts for this important transit corridor. Diane Ting, could you please go on mute? Thank you, folks. Okay. So what we have is really 2 pre-development contracts that Metro has awarded. And we're going to do super brief PowerPoint so folks can see the different alignments and the implications of it. One contractor, LA Skyrail Express, has proposed a monorail alignment that doesn't fulfill 2 of the things that we really said we wanted, which is to be underground on the west side and to have a stop at UCLA. The other pre-contract award does. We have a letter from Councilmember Paul Koretz addressing this concern. It's in the attachments. We know that this is just the beginning of the environmental review process, that these alignments are going to be further defined and refined during the environmental review process. But we wanted to make sure that our COG got ahead of this and really made it clear our priorities to the Metro board about the two key factors for us, which should be subterranean through our area. And we absolutely have to have a station in UCLA. Otherwise, why are we doing this? So Riley O'Brien on our team has been mapping out all of these transportation issues. He's going to do a super quick PowerPoint. I'm going to turn it over to Riley.
Yes, thank you, Cecilia. And I will go ahead and share my screen now. Yeah, just to echo what Cecilia had mentioned, we'll be first talking about the Sepulveda Transit Corridor. 2 years ago in early 2019, Metro refined their initial analysis of the Sepulveda Transit Corridor alternatives with the understanding that the private sector would propose additional alternatives, but the alternatives that Metro had initially proposed all were completely underground through the west side and included a station at UCLA as well as a transfer point at Westwood, UCLA. And then what was brought forth in the last 2 months actually to the Metro board and was eventually approved just to move forward at the stage were two contractors who proposed pretty different alignments, one being the Bechtel Sepulveda Transit Corridor Partners, proposing a very similar alignment to HRT3. The second being LA Skyrail Express, which, as Cecilia had mentioned, does not include a station at UCLA and is actually aerial throughout the west side. We understand that these are not necessarily the final alignments for either of these contractors, and that Metro is considering potentially studying other alternatives during the environmental review phase. Just a couple of quick notes in terms of these two proposals. The Bechtel proposal is underground for most of the alignment, and that includes all of the west side portion. It also has a trip time of 19.7 minutes. Where the LA Skyrail Express, again, is 100% aerial alignment within the right-of-way of Interstate 405 and would have a trip time of 24 minutes from the Metrolink station to the Expo Line station. And as we understand it, based on Metro's staff report and presentation, the range of alternatives for environmental review will be taken to the board in April, so later this month during the Metro board meeting. So we just we're recommending that, if the board wants to take action to ensure that there are alternatives considered that would fulfill those goals mentioned with a station at UCLA and being entirely underground. And specifically, it looks like these HRT1, HRT2 options from 2 years ago, since those were not included in the initial proposal, we want to give the COG board an option to, encourage Metro to move forward with all of these alternatives, or at least whichever alternatives, meet the cities and sub-region goals. So we had proposed a statement, and it was revised by Chair McEwen, to, support an alignment that's entirely underground within the West Side sub-region and includes a station at UCLA, and just to consider all of these options. And I believe our recommendation also reflects that to the extent that cities have not weighed in on this yet, that we just encourage, if you don't want to make a decision at this time, just to discuss this with your city councils. Is there anything?
That does it for our presentation. Thank you, Riley.
And we also have Metro staff who can answer any of the board members' questions, and we do have several public comments on this item.
And before we go there, just to point out, the revision I suggested did not change the intent of what's before us. It merely rephrased it from a negative into a positive, which I think was still congruent with what we have discussed before. And I know for my city, we already have positions that allow us to support this if it's made as a motion. So do we have any questions on this, first of all, before we go to the public?
Mayor McEwen, you have Jay Greenstein and Karen Swift.
Dave, you want to go ahead first?
Yeah, I defer to Karen. Karen can go first, and then I'll add after Karen speaks.
Karen,
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And Peter and I would just like to make a point of clarification on something that was in the PowerPoint. So Peter, I will turn it actually to you if that's okay, to just clarify that issue about how the alternatives will be communicated.
Sure, yeah. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to your meeting. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. The last time I was here was actually the end of the feasibility study, and that was the occasion for presenting the 4 alternatives for Valley of the West Side that Riley shared with you. And I think there's been understandable concern with the laser focus on the PDA contract awards that somehow those 2 alternatives that those teams presented in their proposals would be the only thing studied in the next phase of the work. And as those of you who are familiar with the environmental process know, the environmental process requires consideration of a reasonable range of alternatives, which would require alternatives in addition to those 2 proposed by the PDA contractor teams. As discussed at today's board staff briefing only a few minutes ago, we're finally in a position to be able to bring out more information about those alternatives, and that will be brought to the board and to the public next week. So I think that's the update that you were referring to, Karen, but please feel free to jump in here and to supplement as needed.
Sure. Yeah. So the information will not come to the full board for a vote. It'll come in a board box. And part of that is just because I think we're all a bit exhausted from having this item. It's been at the February Metro Board of Directors, the March Board of Directors. The feedback is clear. Your feedback and your concerns are what we heard during the prior feasibility study. Any comments that we've gotten in the last 2 months, also very consistent with what you're sharing today. So I think, getting this out in a board box is the right way to do it. So look for an e-blast. As soon as that goes out, we'll work with COG staff to make sure all of you get that. And then I am planning an outreach community update meeting probably in late May so that everybody has enough time to notice it. I know there's an endless appetite for information for this project on both sides of the hill. So we want to make sure we're providing that community update from Metro. We think that's important. So kind of, I liken it to hanging back our open sign for business. We've had these extended procurements. We've had this blackout period that's been, I think, a little bit confusing to people. So getting everybody back on the same page as we look forward to scoping in the fall, which Peter will lead, I think will be really helpful. So we will work closely with the COG staff to make sure you have all the information and are getting it out to the cities on the west side as it becomes available.
Well, Peter and or Karen, this isn't just about information from you to us. We're trying to convey some information to you. So let me make sure that should it pass, that the item on our agenda 3C makes clear what the West Side COG's preference, very strong preference, is for the alignment on the west side. Does it?
Yes, it does. And as was pointed out in the presentation, all 4 of the alternatives that were studied during the feasibility study and that were recommended at the end of that study included a underground connection to UCLA and underground alignment on the west side. And my expectation is that that will be studied during the environmental review process.
Does the environmental review process likely include alternatives that do not stop at UCLA and that are not underground on the west side?
So it's important for us to study, as I said, a reasonable range of alternatives. And if we were to only look at one alternative, for example, an alternative that was perhaps the most expensive way to build the project, there would be questions about why we hadn't considered other options that might be more financially feasible. There's no one criteria for how a project should be chosen. It needs to be a balance of a variety of factors, and those factors need to be considered not just by Metro, but by the public and by a variety of stakeholders, and there needs to be a very public process of understanding the different pros and cons of these different options. So
I'm involved with a lot of EIRs over the years, so I understand the process, but I mean, there's a limitation to how wide the net has to be cast. I mean, for instance, all the projects that'll be under environmental review go from the valley to the west side. So, I mean, it's not like you have to study things that are outside a certain range of parameters. So you're telling us that even with our recommendation, we should anticipate that the environmental study may include options that either do not stop at UCLA or are not underground on the west side. That's our expectation at this time, yes. So what will be the weight of this recommendation should we pass it today? It's important that Metro staff and that the Metro board understands the position of stakeholders on the west side. And the proposal that came through as part of the PDA process suggested that from the considerations they felt were most important, they didn't see that it was necessary to include a station at UCLA or an underground connection on the west side. This helps to make those concerns and those values known. Do we have any other questions from the COG for the Metro staff who are here today?
Looks like we have Jay Greenstein.
Actually, I don't have a question for staff. I just wanted to clarify Councilmember Corrett's position. So I can defer if anybody has any questions and then can comment.
Yeah, I think we should stick to questions until we also hear from the public, and then we'll begin discussion. So
okay, that's fine. I'll hold off.
I don't see any other hands up, and I apologize for missing yours. I'm on a Mac Airbook, so the little squares are pretty tiny on this screen. Let's go to the public then. I was told we had two members of the public waiting to weigh in on this. Winnie, can you handle that for us?
Yes, we have Kobe King as our first public comment.
Thank you. I know we also have, as I said earlier, Kobe King from High Point Strategies. UCLA is a client of mine. We also have Jennifer Poulikides, who will also be making comments on behalf of UCLA. I think the main thing that I want to say is just that UCLA certainly appreciates the COG's support for a UCLA station. I think speaking more personally, I think there's some sentiment for what I'm going to say that that while we all understand that there is going to be a community outreach process and that there is going to be scoping in the fall, I think that anyone who has listened to the comments at the two board meetings over the last couple of months and the comments that I'm hearing today at this meeting make it pretty clear that there is very strong support for a project that includes a UCLA station and very strong opposition for one that does not include a UCLA station. And I think it's very appropriate for the COG to demand that, and to even at this point in the process to say that alternatives that do not include the COG's priorities should not even be environmentally cleared. And again, that's not the plan right now, but plans can change based on stakeholder input. And I would encourage the COG to be as strong on the points that they're interested in as possible. It seems to me, and it seems to many people, that any alternative that does not include a UCLA station is a failed project. It does not reach the most important destination on the entire route. So I thank the COG for its proposed statement. I think it's very strong, and I would urge you to adopt it.
Thank you. And our other public comment?
I also have a comment. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Poulikides. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Government and Community Relations at UCLA. Thank you for this opportunity to weigh in, and thank you very much to the COG for proposing this statement in strong support of a UCLA campus station. As we have mentioned many times before, and Kobe just indicated, UCLA is very strongly supportive of a UCLA campus station. In fact, we think that without such a station on this Sepulveda transit corridor, the project would be incomplete. So yes, it will be more expensive to have a station at UCLA than to not have a station at UCLA. But for the project to be a success, we strongly believe that such a station is necessary to help transport students, faculty, staff, patients, and to help diminish the the congestion in Westwood and on the west side. So again, thank you for proposing the statement, and we strongly urge its passage.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other indication on my screen of further public comment. Wendy, did anybody else get in the queue that you're aware of?
I don't see any unless the attendees on the Zoom would like to raise their hand. Other than that, I don't see any other emails as well.
Okay, so we'll close the public input list. And Jay, I know you wanted to make a statement. I'm sorry, somebody does want to comment.
Riley, did you?
It's not completely. It's not totally clear to me because I don't see any raised hands in the attendee list, but I do see a phone number, and just wanted to make sure that there's, I believe by pressing *9 as mentioned in the instructions, that will put you in the raised hand queue.
Every participant I see right now has a name. I don't know where you're seeing a phone number. I see some who don't have video, but
I see a 310 number here, but
I think we're good to go.
Okay, sounds good. And I have not received any emails, by the way. So
okay, so with that, we'll close the public input on 3C. And Jay, I know you wanted to say something on behalf of Councilmember Corrett, so we'll begin discussion with that. But of course, if you're authorized to vote on his behalf, that may be the statement you wish to make. I don't know.
I'm not allowed to vote, so City of LA must have one of our council members here to vote. So, but I just wanted to make some comments of clarification, and also since we submitted the letter that you were sent last night from Councilmember Koretz, we've had some reflection to further clarify his comments. The most important thing that he would like to make clear is the LA Skyrail option, that that he thinks it's critical that proposal, the monorail proposal, when studied, if it doesn't go underground to UCLA and make that Westwood connection, it doesn't make sense to environmentally clear that option. What he didn't say in the letter, but he would want me to clarify, is that he actually personally prefers the monorail option to the subway option. But at this point, that's not a decision that's going to be made by the Metro Board, which option to pursue. So and then this other thing, point of clarification is he has not really taken a position to say that LA Skyrail must continue underground through all portions of the west side. We just wanted to make sure that the underground connection was made with UCLA and Westwood, for preferably the Purple Line station in Westwood. So that's my comments at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Is there other discussion on item 3C, or are we ready to go to a roll call vote? Bob?
I support our statement. I mean, to me, it doesn't make sense to do the environmental review of an option that wouldn't provide what would seem to be a very important objective of the transit system. And should it be built, it would also be built as a project that wouldn't provide what would seem to be a very important objective of a transit system. It would be like building something that goes close to LAX but doesn't get all the way to LAX. It wouldn't take advantage of the transit system. And so I support our statement.
Lauren? I think you're
Unmute, Lauren.
Sorry about that. I would also say that if they don't study it, then we don't have the option of having it. So the most important thing is to make sure that we include in an EIR all of the options that the community is interested in. And if they exclude that option of the underground and going to UCLA, then it doesn't happen. So it must be included in the EIR.
I believe the statement we are going to vote on is pretty clear about that. Any other discussion? I do not see any hands at the moment. And if there is no further discussion, then I'd entertain a motion.
So I'll move that we issue our proposed statement on the Sepulveda Transit Corridor alternative for environmental review.
Second that.
That was moved by Beverly Hills and seconded by Culver City. And
Can I-
further discussion. So Winnie, can we take a roll call? Or do you need a clarification?
Can I clarify that we are
Yeah, sure.
moving for the city councils to take the position, or is it the COG also?
In my case in Santa Monica, I've checked with staff and we are prepared to take that position.
Okay.
I can't speak for other cities. Maybe they'd like to weigh in.
Right. So for us, we haven't discussed it, so I can't say that our city council will adopt this, but I would advocate for us as a COG to adopt it.
I'm in the same position as Mayor Wunderlich.
Okay.
City has not discussed it.
Mayor Fish?
I'm pretty confident where we would end up with this, and that would be to issue a statement, but I'm also supportive of the COG. I mean, I think that we want to make a lot of noise in support of our desires here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
So Winnie, with that clarification, for the moment, an affirmative vote here would put the COG on record. We would make this statement. You have now the information that Santa Monica concurs in the statement, and you would have to follow up with the other individual cities to get feedback from them that represented the voices of their independent city councils. Is that what this motion will do?
Yes, we will do
Okay,
that.
we have a motion by Beverly Hills, seconded by Culver City. And Whitney, if you call the roll.
I think it was second by Mayor Fish. Was that
Yes,
accurate?
made by Beverly Hills, seconded by Culver City.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll do roll call. Beverly Hills,
Yes.
Culver City,
Yes.
Santa Monica,
Yes.
West Hollywood,
Yes.
and then County of Los Angeles, if Fernando, you were there.
I abstain since my boss is on the Metro board.
Got it. Thank you.
So does that suffice to pass the motion, Winnie?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 3D, Metro Don't Go Away. This is about Metro buses. Staff have a presentation on this?
Very brief. I'm going to turn it over to Riley, but the context is we want to support, we would like to recommend that the board go on record of supporting an early action program for Metro Bus Rapid Transit. There's a couple of alignments coming through the west side. We want to make sure folks know if this is the will of the COG that we'd like to see those in the early action priorities. Take it away, Riley.
Yes, I will do my best to make this one even shorter. So this was originally an informational item, planned to be an informational item that the Metro BRT Vision and Principles study had wrapped up their initial study and identified the top 5 corridors countywide to receive funding. Those, as you can see, are include 2 corridors on the west side, Venice and La Cienega, which actually would extend along Jefferson Boulevard as well. The board report recommended Broadway as the first corridor to receive funding. And again, there are 2 corridors on the west side, Venice and La Cienega, that would also receive funding, but that funding would likely come decades in the future without this early action program. So the reason for this action item is that an amendment by Directors Bond and Solis and Hahn proposed, and this was actually adopted by the Metro Board, and a BRT early action program that would include a quick build approach to BRT and would involve pursuing a near-term delivery strategy for the identified early action corridors. So as staff, what we are recommending, these Venice and La Cienega, Jefferson, all 3 of those boulevards have been prioritized in our West Side Mobility Study as priority projects for bus lanes and or bus rapid transit or BRT. So we are suggesting as staff that the West Side Cities Council of Governments Board support the BRT early action program and pursue that near-term delivery strategy for these 2 corridors. And again, just to clarify, it's Venice Boulevard through the city of Los Angeles, but along the border with Culver City, And then the La Cienega Jefferson combined alignment, which would pass through Culver City, Beverly Hills, and the city of Los Angeles.
Thanks, Riley.
Do you have any questions about that from COG members? I see none. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this?
We do. I'm going to bring up Eli Lippman. Eli, are you there? There you are.
Hi. I didn't realize I'd be on video, but thank you very much to the chair and to all the honorable council members who are here today. Eli Lippman, Deputy Director with Move LA. We're a transit advocacy organization founded by Denny Zane. We are in strong support of this motion and for early action. We were very disappointed that these BRT corridors were being, we're excited that these BRT corridors were being considered, disappointed that they would be funded decades from now. As one of the primary sort of conveners of and supporters of Measure R and M, we want to see high speed, high quality, rapid transit throughout the county as soon as possible, because not only are they less expensive investments than heavy rail or even light rail, but they are proven to get people out of their cars, and we need to see that ASAP. So we support this strongly. Thank you so much for bringing it up, and we look forward to working with all your cities on implementing these. And we're really excited by efforts like in Beverly Hills and Culver City and Santa Monica to deploy quick action bus lanes and bike lanes. And we'd like to see the city of Los Angeles do more of that as well. We've seen it in downtown. We think we can see it in the West Side as well. So thank you very much. And you can put me back into the attendee group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Winnie. Any other public comment?
I do not see any.
Nor do I, so that'll close the public comment. And do any of the COG members have any further discussion or questions, or would somebody care to make a motion?
I'd be happy to move if no one has comments. We're excited.
And Santa Monica will second that. So we have a motion by Culver City, seconded by Santa Monica. I do not see any further requests for discussion. So Winnie, can you go ahead with the roll call?
Yes. Beverly Hills?
Yes.
Culver City?
Yes.
Santa Monica?
Yes.
West Hollywood?
Yes.
And County of Los Angeles?
Abstain against this. My boss is on the Metro board.
Okay. Motion passes.
Okay, and Winnie, were you looking also for individual city council affirmation of this, or is it premature for that at this point?
This is just a COG, Riley, if you want to clarify. I think this will be a COG statement, but also urging city councils to also take it.
Don't mean to complicate things, just didn't want to miss something when we had the opportunity with everybody here. So that'll conclude our action items, 3A through D. What we have left is reports, updates, legislation updates, receive and file, etc. So we have still quite a bit on the agenda, but we'll move now to the executive director's report.
Great. I'm going to move quickly through this so we can get to the updates on some of the substantive stuff. As you've seen in the executive director's report that's in your written materials, at the request of Culver City Mayor Alex Fish, we submitted a letter in support of a very long name of a title of a Appropriations Act of the American Rescue Plan, basically allocations for transit that would be more beneficial to Metro rather than so that Metro could be reimbursed for the substantial outlays it's made during the pandemic and receive recovery for that. So we sent that out and we've attached a letter. The other item we want to, and I don't know, Mayor Fish, if you'd like to discuss this at all, but we really appreciated you drawing this to our attention.
Lucky to have great staff, and I'll take all the credit. They can do all the work.
Thank you, Mayor Fish. And then the next item is West Side COG boundary review. So the boundaries haven't been reviewed in quite a bit of time. I'm going to turn this over for more detail to Winnie, but it's come up a bit about the alignment of our boundaries as a COG versus Metro's versus the social service boundaries. So Winnie, go ahead and handle this topic.
Yeah, Riley and I have been talking about this for quite some time, and when we had some downtime to really think this through, this came about when we were doing the 2020 mobility study, when our consultant asked us which boundaries should we use. Should we use the COG boundaries or Metro's LRTP assigned boundaries, which I believe SCAG also uses to identify as part of their plans. So something that with Riley, who has mapping capabilities, we would like to propose a few alternatives for the next meeting to see which makes sense, since we are approaching not only some transportation, but also potentially homelessness and housing study to look at our boundaries a little closer. For homelessness, for example, we look at service planning areas, SPA levels, which our COG is actually in 2 different SPA groups. And then also, if we were to do some census data demographics analysis, do we want to look at aligning our boundaries with the census tracts? So this is something that we would like to bring to discussion at the next meeting. If there are any proposals or any other alternatives that you would like us to evaluate, please let us know.
Winnie, if I can ask a question, I was here when we formed the COG and made the decision what our boundaries would be, which are, of course, in keeping with the jurisdictional governmental boundaries of cities and districts within the city of LA. The only wild card, I guess, would be how much of unincorporated LA County would be included. Are you talking about changing the joint powers agreement and changing the boundaries of the COG as a jurisdiction, or talking about changing the boundaries of what area we consider on individual studies that we undertake, or both?
That's a good point. Not necessarily changing the JPA. I think that is a big overtaking, but for the purposes of studies, just to see, does it make sense to go with Metro's LRTP, how they aligned it, or along census tracts, or along our city jurisdictions.
So more than talking about changing the area over which we rule or have jurisdiction, you're talking about conforming the boundaries we use on studies to match the data sets that we can get from other bodies that are studying the same thing.
That's correct.
Okay. And that'll be on our next agenda. We're not going to decide that today. Are there any further?
I'm going to decide that today, and we'll be able to bring you some maps, and hopefully we'll be able to run through that pretty quickly.
Any board members have any questions before we move on? Okay.
Just one quick comment. If I know our staff is very interested in working with the COG on this, so if as you develop this agenda item, we're happy to help.
Thank you for that offer. Cecilia, anything else in your report?
That's it. I think we want to move right on to the transportation updates because we haven't talked about transportation enough.
No, and it's all Metro all the time. So we have 3 transportation updates: Metro unfunded strategic project list, highway program guidelines updates, and Metro Fairless Systems initiative updates. Something I'm personally very interested in. So is that going to be done by Metro or done by staff, or who's going to handle that?
Okay, I'm going to start this off, and then we will go pretty quickly. First, on the unfunded strategic project list. Last meeting, we talked to you about this as kind of a call from Metro to see if folks had items that they wanted to include on this in case there were additional funds that might be made available to accelerate some of our unfunded projects. We put together this project list. You'll see that's item 5. It's page, I believe, 14 in your agenda packet. It's really based on the West Side Mobility Plan that we just updated. And so we took those that had been unfunded, those that would qualify for this, essentially a call for projects, and put it together in a list, which has been attached as attachment A to item 5. Since then, we've received a request from West Hollywood to add additional projects to that list. And it's our intent to include that. We'll be working with the Transportation Working Group. We bring it to you today as an information item because we're going to need to submit this to Metro pretty quickly. And we want to make sure that we get this in on time since it's an opportunity to to highlight some of the needs we have in our area. I don't know, Riley, if you wanted to add anything else to that, Riley or Winnie? Nope. Okay,
Yeah, well, I could just clarify that Metro has emphasized that this is an unfunded list and it's not a prioritized list. It's not tied to any future specific funding, but it's just meant to help guide regional planning efforts.
Yeah, so your transportation working group saw this in March, and we just wanted to bring this to you so you could take a look at this list, and that's all we have.
Okay, I think that covers 5A.
We have a hand from Lauren Meister.
Sorry, Lauren?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Cecilia for bringing up the City of West Hollywood's request to add protected bike lanes for Santa Monica Boulevard and Fountain Avenue as projects that we would like to see on the list, as these are some new initiatives that we have approved at the council level to study. So we would like to see that on the list, and we would appreciate everyone's support. Thank you.
Great. So that's it for that item, unless there are any questions on it. I don't see any other.
No, I think we can go on to 5B.
Okay, Riley, you want to talk about the Metro Highway Program guidelines? Never ends. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this, it never ends, but it's a pretty straightforward update, just that the Metro Board released the highway program guidelines that we had supported as a COG, and during their March meeting, released those for public input. So that's moving along.
And go ahead right into the Fairless Systems Initiative update.
Yeah, similarly, the Fairless System Initiative is moving forward. The Metro Fairless System Initiative Task Force will return to the Metro Board in April with a more detailed report on various considerations, but they've begun to float some of these potential considerations already, including funding opportunities, coordination with municipal operators, and cost savings opportunities. So just a quick update on those two items.
We know it's of great interest to the members of the COG. So as we get more details, but also being mindful of your desire not to have extensive presentations, we'll try to balance that out. But we know that you may want to move swiftly in taking positions as this develops.
Well, I think especially those of us cities who have our own
absolutely
patient arms are interested in how we can coordinate with this as it goes forward. This is something I suggested in Santa Monica about 13 years ago, and it was derailed by the economic collapse in 2008, 2009. So I'm thrilled to see it coming back, but it'll have an effect on the Big Blue bus and the Culver City bus, et cetera. So we do need to be kept updated. Are there any further comments on this item? We still have quite a bit left on our agenda, and I don't see any comments. So let's move right into item 6, homelessness and housing updates. And the first is 6A, the REAP grant sub-regional partnership program update.
Okay, Winnie's going to do this entire section. Take it away, Winnie.
Yes, there's no staff report. It's an oral report from me. For the REAP application, this is some new updates as of yesterday. We are still working with SCAG on the MOU process. It is taking quite a bit of a long time, but some good news there. With the delay of the MOU, I've actually reached out to our cities again to kind of reevaluate how we prioritize these projects. As you all know, our cities are moving pretty far along in our housing elements. And we reevaluated and bringing them back with a new scope of work in which SCAG will actually procure. And the good thing is SCAG is actually making available a bunch of consultants that we can have access to, which would help streamline the timeline and procurement process. So that's a good thing. So we believe that process would start in 6 weeks. So we're looking at a timeline of starting in May or June of this year and continuing on to next year. With that said, with the revised scope of work, we would try to have the consultant provide some technical assistance with the city staff on the preparation of housing elements, but it will mostly be focused on implementation of the housing elements. Also on that note, SCAG is also launching a housing leadership academy across the region, which will be focusing on building pro-housing coalitions with elected officials and stakeholders through these training sessions. So if there are any interest from the COG board members or members from your city councils, please let me know so I can provide more information and loop you into some of the, once they launch the academy. Are there any questions on this item?
Well, I'll just comment that the timeline on the housing element is pretty tight for our cities. So you said this will be mostly about implementation rather than preparation of the housing elements. And I can tell you from our point of view, the implementation need is simple: bring money.
Yes, yes. So part of that will be hiring a consultant to evaluate a feasibility of a regional funding program. So that would be a big part of our study.
Any other questions on 6A?
Okay.
Seeing none, Winnie, you're on a roll.
Okay, for the homelessness strategic plan, we meet monthly with our homelessness working group, and we propose that we amend our strategic action plan to address COVID-related challenges. Some thoughts to consider with Project Home Key, that was a success, and the governor has extended the program and provided additional funding that probably won't be available till either later this year or next year. Our cities have expressed interest in collaborating together in acquiring a site. We have started with a preliminary list that was provided by HCID, City of LA, where we will continue to look further to see what makes sense for our West Side cities and determine how to define the city's contribution and fair share, whether it's designating a number of units or services. Another thing that we also want to highlight in our action plan is how our cities will plan to roll out our vaccination sites throughout the West Side region. And then also, as Riley mentioned, with the fearless transit system that might happen next year, this will be a very good opportunity to work with Metro to expand our outreach services on our trains, transit system, and bus stops. And I'm open to the staff and board if there are anything that you would like us to include as we amend our strategic plan.
I'm sure we can email you if we come up with something after the meeting. Lauren, are you raising your hand? Okay, you do have your electronic hand up now. Yes, please.
I am, thank you. Winnie, it would be great if the West Side Cities COG could take a position or at least look at the METs. We've gotten reports that the METs, the mental health evaluation teams have been extremely effective in dealing with the homeless population. And so, and I know that the county has a limited number of MET that they provide, and I understand they're going to be increasing them, but it's a big county. So, if we can look at that aspect and see if there's anything we can do as a West Side Cities COG to encourage additional teams or urge the county to, provide that to the county, provide it to us and to other areas in the county, that would be something that I would like to look into.
Thank you. We will do that. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Our county regional coordination grant, we've actually received an extension to the end of the year, which is great. And they've also provided an additional $15,000. I also want to announce that the Homelessness Initiative Director, Phil Ansel, has retired. So we do have a new director, and that person is Sherry Todoroff, who recently served as a director of community programs for the County Department of Health Services. So we're excited to be working with her. And that wraps up my update on this item.
I see no comments or questions, so we'll move on to action item 7, legislation. Now, while we've been busy in our own cities, I understand there's also been stuff happening in Sacramento. So 7A is the League of California Cities update. Jeff, you're here. Are you going to be handling that for us?
Yes, and there's a lengthy report in your agenda packet. I want to highlight just a couple quick bills because some of them have changed those things. But so I'm going to go in order of your agenda. On page 18, SB 9, the Atkins bill that would allow for lot splits and duplexes. That has been amended. The amendments really show that it caps the number of units on any current single family zone to 4 total. I know many groups have been talking about that it allowed for 10. So the Pro Tem really wanted to make clear that it is 4. That will not in any way affect the League of California Cities' opposition to the bill, but I just wanted to at least make mention of it. On page 20 of your agenda, AB 1401 by Assemblyman Friedman, that bill would prohibit minimum parking standards within within a half of a mile of a major transit stop. That would also include in the definitions of this bill the entire corridor of high capacity bus lines. So like Santa Monica Boulevard or PCH, those types of things. So that would wipe out parking standards for most of the West Side. So I wanted to highlight that for you. That is going to be heard in committee on the 14th. One more that I wanted to mention quickly. Mirit Suchi's on page 20, AB 1372, his right to shelter bill that would have required a city to house any homeless person who requests housing for 3 consecutive days. He has parked that bill. It's not going to move this year. So that takes that one off the table. On page 22, SB 617, solar permitting, again, Senator Wiener. This would require cities with a population of 10,000 or more to implement an online, automated, and instantaneous permit issuing process for solar systems, solar panel systems under 38 megawatts, kilowatts, excuse me. So that obviously makes, for some cities, it's doable, but a lot of our smaller cities don't have that capacity on their website now. And lastly, I wanted to make mention of SB 210, again, Senator Wiener, on page 25, regarding license plate readers. This is actually passed through committee, 2 different committees with only 1 no vote. It's in appropriations now, kind of parked on the suspense file, but it would require cities to dump all of that license plate reader data every 24 hours. And law enforcement agencies are concerned that that does not give them enough time for active investigations. If you don't have a description or a license plate number when a crime is committed right away, you might lose that data if you're forced to dispose of it within 24 hours. So that's one we certainly have concerns about, and it is moving very quickly. And as I said, just 1 no vote. So I wanted to highlight those bills, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions on any of what I've given you.
I'm sure all of our cities are taking positions on various bills. In Santa Monica, at our meeting next Tuesday, we'll be voting on the city of Santa Monica's legislative agenda, including general direction and probably some specific bill. We try to avoid doing votes on any individual bill and instead adopt a policy. This has been a report. Are there any questions? Because if not, any action here would be in 7B, the COG cities legislative priorities, which our staff will present. If there are no questions for the league, then I'd ask that we move on to 7B.
I don't see anybody's hand raised. Okay, we'll move on to 7B then. So what we have done to date is compile the positions that have been taken by our member cities. As you noted, Mr. Chairman, Santa Monica has not yet adopted its legislative agenda. What we've done in the past for the COG's legislative agenda is basically waited for all the cities to pass theirs. And then what we've done is an analysis to find alignment. And then we would bring that compilation to the board so that they're, it'll be smaller than a typical city platform. So it'll be a few key areas that you have prioritized, namely housing, homelessness, and maybe transportation have been the ones that have been the focal point of the COG, and bring you those positions. We anticipate doing that at our next meeting, but we've captured the legislative advocacy platforms of the cities that have acted to date, sort of reference point. So that's where we are at this point, and expect us to give you a platform next meeting.
Yeah, so 5 days from now, you will get Santa Monica's. Are we the last? You have everybody else's?
I think so, Winnie.
Sorry to hold up the process, but
No worries. I still need to get in touch with the county and city for their priorities.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get ours to you next week.
Great.
Okay.
And that'll conclude item 7B, unless there are questions from the board. And it being almost 1 o'clock, we'll move on to receive and file.
Yes. Our audit is not attached because it's a file protected thing. We couldn't put it on a PDF. I know it sounds strange, but it is available on our website. We got a clean audit. We encourage you to take a look at it on our website. That's it for staff.
Okay, that concludes item 8, receive and file, moves us to announcements, item 9. And there's one that Metro staff I know wants to make about Crenshaw Northern Extension.
All right, thank you. I'll try to go quickly. The Crenshaw Northern Extension, which will essentially connect the Expo to the purple and the red with the potential terminus at the Hollywood Bowl. We're going to open our scoping period April 15th to May 28th. We're going to hold 3 virtual meetings on April 29th, May 6th, and May 8th. If you can't make those meetings, we're going to have a story map you can follow along. As well, we'll post the recordings of those meetings on our website. And we'll send out the Zoom information for those meetings out on the 15th as well. And otherwise, if anyone has any comments, that it'll be on the website. It's also within the fact sheet that's in your agenda packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements from board members? I don't see a separate item for that on today's agenda, but we usually do allow any announcements from board members. Lauren, West Hollywood.
Yeah, I just want to offer my congratulations to Mayor Wunderlich and wish him a good year, a better year than last year. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, some of us got pretty
I
bad.
hope that's for all of us, not just me. Yes.
Well, let's move on then to the future meetings and agenda items, item 10 on today's agenda. Our next meeting is on June 10th, and it is a big one. We will be electing our new officers, we'll be appointing people to our committees, and we'll be adopting the COG's annual budget. Is there anything else that staff wants to tell us about that next meeting?
And your legislative agenda.
So we won't have a lot to do, and it'll probably be a 10 or 15-minute meeting.
Exactly right.
So is there anything else that any board member would like to put on the agenda out of just sheer desire to keep us here for a week at a time? I think that agenda is pretty full, is what I'm hinting. If board members do have things they want to agendize in the future, please let staff know. I'm sure that June won't be typical. We'll have some agendas that have some space on them in the future. Winnie, do we have anybody who wanted to make a general public comment?
I don't see any raised hands or emails on my end.
Okay, well then, if I'm correct in assuming we have now concluded all of our business for the day, and I don't see any indication that that is not the case, at 1:02, I will adjourn this meeting of the Westside COG and see you all in June. Thanks for being here.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.